Imagine a place where the very air seems to pulse with something ancient, something malevolent. A place so steeped in darkness that even the locals refuse to speak its name out loud. They call it the Whispering Forest, but it's not the name that haunts them, it's what happens inside. The stories? They're more than just legend. They're warnings. 4 friends, driven by curiosity and a thirst for adventure, decided to defy those warnings. Armed with cameras and a sense of invincibility, they ventured into the heart of the forest. They believed they were chasing thrills. What they didn't know was that something far older, far more dangerous, was waiting for them. A force that has been feeding on fear for centuries. This is their story, the last moments they captured before the forest claimed them. What you're about to witness is real, and it will make you question everything you thought you knew about fear. Because in the Whispering Forest, terror isn't just a feeling, it's alive. In the secluded mountains of Eastern Europe, there exists a forest so old and untouched that even time seems to have forgotten it. The locals call it the Whispering Forest, but they rarely speak of it, and when they do, it's only in hushed tones, as if the trees themselves are listening. Legends say that this forest is cursed, that anyone who enters never returns. The stories vary. Some speak of vengeful spirits, others of ancient, dark magic, but all agree on one thing. The forest is alive, and it hungers. One cold October, 4 college friends, Mark, Sarah, Dave, and Emily, decided to explore the Whispering Forest. They were thrill seekers, always on the lookout for the next adventure, and the tales of the forest only fueled their curiosity. Armed with cameras and flashlights, they set out to document their experience, determined to prove the legends wrong. As they entered the forest, the atmosphere changed instantly. The air was thick and heavy, the light dim despite the midday sun. The trees, towering and twisted, seemed to close in around them, blocking out the sky. A sense of unease settled over the group, but they pressed on, laughing nervously to mask their growing fear. Hours passed, and the deeper they went, the stranger things became. The forest was eerily silent. No birds, no animals, not even the sound of leaves rustling. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The only sound was their footsteps, crunching on the dead leaves that carpeted the forest floor. Then, they began to hear it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. At first, they thought it was just the wind, but as the whispers grew louder, they realized it was something far more sinister. The whispers were coming from the trees, a low murmur that seemed to speak directly into their minds, filling them with dread. Mark, always the skeptic, shrugged it off as a trick of the wind and encouraged the group to keep moving. But the others were less convinced. Sarah, who had always been sensitive to the paranormal, felt a deep, gnawing fear taking hold of her. She tried to tell the others, but the words caught in her throat, as if something was preventing her from speaking. As dusk approached, they stumbled upon a small clearing, a rare break in the oppressive forest. Exhausted, they decided to set up camp. The sun had nearly set, casting long, dark shadows that seemed to stretch toward them like claws. The temperature dropped sharply, and a thick fog began to roll in, wrapping around them like a shroud. Around the campfire, the mood was tense. The whispers had not ceased, they had only grown louder, more insistent. Mark, determined to document everything, grabbed his camera and began filming. The footage would later reveal something they hadn't noticed at the time, dark shapes moving just beyond the firelight, barely visible but unmistakably there. Suddenly, the whispers coalesced into something more, a voice, deep and resonant, speaking in an ancient, forgotten language. It was a voice of authority, of power, and it filled them with an overwhelming sense of dread. The ground beneath them seemed to vibrate with the voice's intensity, as if the very earth was responding to its command. Sarah stood up abruptly, her eyes wide with terror. "We need to leave. Now," she whispered urgently, but it was already too late. The fog thickened, becoming almost solid, cutting them off from the outside world. The forest had them now, and it wasn't going to let them go. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. Dave grabbed a flashlight and pointed it into the fog, but the light barely penetrated the dense mist. Shadows moved within the fog, darting closer with every passing second. They weren't alone, and whatever was out there was getting closer. Mark, desperate to maintain some semblance of control, yelled at the others to stay together, but the whispers drowned out his voice. The fog seemed to pulse with energy, the shadows within it growing more distinct. They could see them now, figures, humanoid but twisted, their limbs elongated and faces featureless. They were closing in, their movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring the terror of their prey. Emily, trembling with fear, clutched her camera, recording everything despite her shaking hands. "What are they?" she whispered, but no one had an answer. The figures circled them, their whispers merging into a haunting, discordant chant that filled the air with palpable malevolence. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted, and with a thunderous crack, the earth split open, revealing a deep chasm. Out of it rose a figure, larger and more terrifying than the others, its form shrouded in darkness. It spoke in the same ancient tongue, its voice reverberating through the trees, causing the very air to vibrate. Mark, Sarah, Dave, and Emily could do nothing but stare in horror as the figure extended a shadowy hand towards them. The whispers reached a deafening crescendo, and with a final, terrifying roar, the figure lunged at them. The camera fell to the ground, the lens cracked, but it continued recording. The last thing it captured was the forest closing in around the clearing, the trees moving as if alive, sealing off the space where the friends once stood. The whispers slowly faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Days later, a search party ventured into the whispering forest. They found no trace of the friends, no tents, no gear, no bodies. The only thing left behind was the camera, half buried in the leaves. When they reviewed the footage, they saw the terror that had befallen the group, but even more disturbing were the final frames. The video ended with a single frame of darkness, but if you looked closely, you could just make out a face twisted in agony, eyes wide with fear, staring out from the shadows. To this day, the Whispering Forest remains a place of mystery and dread. The locals know better than to venture too close, for they say the forest remembers. It knows the fear of those who entered and never left, and it waits patiently for its next victims. So, if you ever find yourself near the Whispering Forest, heed the warnings. Stay away, for once you enter, you may never leave, and you might just become another whisper in the trees.